not even.
Let there be 1,000 lessons learned.
No forced redundancies.
Please sit down, Clint. Please sit down.
Well, hi everyone, and welcome back to our podcast Unpacked, where we unpack the issues of the day with someone really interesting. And we do have a great guest for today's show, but first I want to introduce our guest co-host. Corinne's sick today. She doesn't have a voice, but Renee Coffey has agreed to stand in for her. Renee has been on our list of guests that we want to have on the podcast, and so we will do a full episode with Renee once Corinne's back on deck. But I'm so pleased to have Renee here with us today on Unpacked. Thanks so much for coming in at late notice.
No, I'm absolutely thrilled to be able to step in and help out. I'm looking forward to coming on later, but today it's exciting. Great guest too.
Renee, you ran a really inspirational community campaign in Griffith. Tell us what it feels like to go to Canberra with all of that support behind you.
Well, I've just come back from 2 weeks in Canberra, which was amazing to be down there with the class of 2025. As you say, they're an amazing lot, great diversity, to have so many women, but also people from a range of different backgrounds. It's just been amazing. Like, I can't believe I get to work there, and I can't believe they're my colleagues. So, yeah, really great.
And the Griffith community is a pretty great one to represent. Tell us a little bit about Griffith. We want to keep most of your story for the episode, but just introduce the electorate for us.
Griffith is a beautiful community. It goes from West End all the way out to Corinne and, up as far north as Bulimba and down to a little corner of Mount Gravatt East. So it's quite a good geographic spread and very diverse. It's a lovely, warm community. We've got so many great sporting facilities, community clubs, schools. It's just an excellent community. I love it.
Well, I think that's a great introduction to what you're up to at the moment, and we'll get on to what got you here in the episode. But our guest today is Clint Newton, is the CEO of the Rugby League Players Association. So brings together two of my favourite things, rugby league and trade unions.
Yes,
and
exactly. I'm very excited. I haven't met Clint before, so I'm very excited to meet him.
Yeah, I'm so glad that he's agreed to come on. I think there's lots of things to talk about. He's played rugby league himself, and now represents the players with their collective bargaining and player welfare and all of that kind of thing.
Absolutely, and he's been doing a good job, so it'd be great to have a chat.
Yeah, well, let's get him in.
Fantastic.
Hey, g'day.
How's it going?
Welcome.
Good to see you.
Hey, Clint, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
Yeah, now we've got your sandwich. We might just stuff that in the fridge. We can
that'd be good.
open that up a bit later.
This reminds me back of the days when Mum used to pack my lunch for me.
Yeah.
It was great.
There you go.
And what's your pick for the sandwich? What did you go?
I went chicken, avocado, cucumber. Pretty
High protein.
Pretty
That's
staple,
good.
staple diet, yeah. Still consider myself trying to be an athlete. So.
Clint, you played rugby league. Who'd you play for?
I was a bit of a journeyman. I didn't start till I was about 13 because I was too small. My dad didn't want me to play until I sort of was turning 13, and then fortunate enough I got selected in the Knights in 2001 and played there for several years, and then went down to Melbourne, winning a comp down there, over to England, played in the English Super League for Hull Kingston Rovers. New Challenge Cup champions, which is great, for 4 years, back to Penrith for 2, and then finished off my career at Newcastle again for 2 years. So, 15 years there, which was all up, which I got the most out of my body I could possibly get.
Yeah, that's a great career, and imagine sets you up really well for your job now, CEO of the Rugby League Players Association. Some people listening might not know what the Players Association is. It's a bit like a union for the players, yeah?
Absolutely. It's absolutely exactly that. I mean, we're fiercely independent, obviously ensuring that our players, voices are heard and respected, and we're protecting and advancing their rights and their terms and conditions. I don't think anyone could argue that a strong union actually creates a strong industry. And I think that given the rise of the RLPA, probably since about 2012, 2013, we've seen the game track on a pretty steep trajectory from there because our terms and conditions have, significantly improved. Our rights have improved. The environment, players are happier. They've got more protections and more certainty. Obviously, with the women's now being included, it's been a struggle, but we're making some good progress there with regards to their terms and conditions. But yeah, I mean, whilst we've been operating since 1979, we only got our first collective bargaining agreement in 2003. Yeah. So So really, we were sort of late to the party, which Tony Butterfield, secured for us. And then we've literally only gone through sort of 4 CBA cycles, since then, because it's a 5-year term. So, but we've made some significant advancements.
And so we'll get on to a bit more about the kind of industrial stuff in a minute, but just tell us a bit more about yourself, your family, kids.
Yeah, I've got 3 daughters, so it's a double-edged sword when you're raising independent girls. But it'll pay off.
We're aware.
Yeah, it'll pay off in the end. It's already paying off, but I feel like every day my negotiating skills is getting...
Sharpening those tools.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But... my wife, she's fantastic. She's been such a tremendous supporter of mine. I can't do what I do, being away or long hours or whatnot, without having a strong and resilient wife. And the girls see that, on a daily basis. And that's great to see, because my mum was, arguably the strongest woman I've ever come across, with what she went through with my father and putting up with him and me. But, we have a good life. I'm really proud of our daughters. But as I said, they constantly push the boundaries, which is a good thing, apparently. We create a safe space for them to push the boundaries, apparently. But no, it's good.
I think I know the answer to this question already. Origin night in your house, the Newton family household. Who are you going for? Just putting
New
it out
South
on the
Wales,
table.
I've got the blue jacket
Sorry
on.
about
Yeah.
I think often people go, "Oh, don't you have to be bipartisan?" And I was like, "No, well, I think the players would want to know that I have to be, firm in my convictions. You can't just flip-flop, teams." And so Origin was such a staple diet of ours, ever since I was growing up, where we'd make the pilgrimage, to Sydney. From some of my earliest memories of watching Origin, we were behind O'Connor kicking the goal in the early 90s. We were also there when Mark Coyne unfortunately scored in the corner, when Wally and MG had their scrap and whatnot. So but. We'll bounce back. It's we're still licking our wounds, but we'll bounce back.
I like your optimism.
So Blues in the Origin. What's your club team?
Whoever one of the 3 clubs are leading, are up the top of the table that I played for. But I mean, Newcastle obviously is my childhood club. It was a real privilege, to work hard and play for a club that I grew up supporting, since '88. My father was a Parramatta man prior to that. And the moment the Knights came in '88, he changed allegiances and said, "No, if there's a team in my town, that's who we're going to support." And he removed his Parramatta Eels glass eye and put his Knights one in for the games. But my time at Melbourne was obviously fantastic, and it was at a period of time when I was, contemplating retirement or giving away for a period of time, given the environment I was exposed to in Newcastle in 2007 and what was going on there, and then to go to such a strong and safe environment, Melbourne, and culturally connected. And then to obviously win the comp, and then Penrith again is to see where they've come from. Where in 2012 when I first went there under Ivan, his first year of being a Penrith coach, and Gus brought me over from England, to see where they've got to now from where they were is great. And there's probably bit of a theme there around the underdog teams that I like to go for, albeit Melbourne were leading the comp. But again, it was very much a us against the world type club, which is something I certainly buy into.
There's a lot of effort today about supporting players and, making sure mental health is supported. And you spoke about supportive clubs. What does that look like?
Yeah, so I think
in your experience, but not now, back then when you were playing.
Oh, there was very limited mental health support. I think the whole stigma around mental health and even men having to carry their issues silently was a real problem. And I think unfortunately we've seen some of the consequences of that, where it's sort of unprocessed and unpacked trauma that players were exposed to in their sort of day-to-day lives, plus some of the challenges during their career.
You had a season-ending injury in your early career.
Yeah, Yeah, I mean, again, there was limited support there, or sorry, I should say limited expert support. And I think that's one of the key things, is to have the experts there that are best in class, that are well trained to understand the environment, what players go through, which now, again, the players fought hard to get the first ever wellbeing education funding in 2003 in our first collective bargaining agreement. That came from the players' share of revenue to invest in that. And then that's been able to be maintained and advanced, since then. But it was really, it would have been difficult for a lot of players. And I saw players that I was playing with going through different struggles without knowing where to go and who to speak to, and not having someone inside the club, where now we've got a trained professional wellbeing manager and careers and education manager at every club. We still need to work towards having full-time employment for our female wellbeing and education and career managers. But it's come a long way. There's still work to do, but it was felt quite lonely in that time. And if you really just relied on your mates and your circle around you. But if you weren't courageous enough, or you didn't feel safe enough to actually go forward, you're carrying that around 24/7 whilst trying to play, arguably the toughest game in the world. It can be a struggle.
And what drew you to the RLPA? What helped make you made that decision?
Yeah, we're a strong union family from, dating back from my grandfather, and when my father and his family were growing up in the coalfields, the mines shut down, in the sort of early 1960s. And they had to move because there was no employment. Obviously, so many people lost their jobs in the Hunter Valley, and he moved to Sydney, became a police officer. So he went from one sort of, union workforce to another, and became senior sergeant of Balmain and Eastwood, and did his time through the Cross and whatnot. So I think our family's always been deeply entrenched in fairness, advocacy, rights, terms and conditions, protection of the worker, to help drive the industry. I think, sometimes we've, certainly in this country and probably globally, is we've lost our roots in that regard. Like, stronger workers' rights have advanced our country. There's no doubt about that. And any industry that has strong representation, as I said earlier, has made significant changes to the industry and moved it forward. So I think my father was always pro fairness and investment in people, and really trying to leave the world better than when you found it. So watching my father fight for different things, particularly around his Junior Golf Foundation, back when it first started in '86, leading into that, after his accident, he had all sorts of issues with regards to just getting kids on golf courses, and because a lot of it back there was the sort of Blue Blazer Brigade, and didn't want kids playing on their course. They would slow it down, or it's not a playground for them. But ultimately, as he said, that, well, where does your next form of membership come from?
Exactly.
How does actually
Where's
golf
that pipeline?
survive if you don't actually invest in kids sport? And he's absolutely been the biggest investor in golf, in junior golf in this country.
So he was a pretty good golfer in his time too.
Yeah, he was
not
good.
too bad.
Yeah, no, he was good. He was really flamboyant. He obviously lost to two of the game's greats in two majors with Tom Watson and Seve Ballesteros. Watson in the British Open at Carnoustie, and Seve at the Masters at Augusta. Fortunate enough, unfortunately for him, he came up against two absolute legends that both won their first major against Dad, and they both went on to win multiple majors from that point on. So, but he was a great player, very charismatic, really relatable to the fan. Used to obviously talk to a lot of the fans, back in the day, obviously smoking during the round and wearing his flary pants. And Mum used to actually design
Iconic.
his pants.
Iconic.
Yeah, she used to cut up curtains and make his pants for him. So,
I love that.
So yeah, they are one of a kind. I wish I could still wear them. They're good fancy dress.
That's great. Now tell us, I think a lot of people listening or watching will, they'll know they've got an EBA or an award. They're probably also away players have their individual agreements that their agents negotiate, and they're probably less aware of the collective bargaining agreement and the role it plays. Can you explain that for us?
Yeah, like the reality is for us, like any other industry that's got union representation, is that you are bound by all your terms. We negotiate all the terms and conditions for the players. So that's how an integrity process is run, and the sanctioning process, to their minimum wage, to the salary cap, to investment in the retirement account, wellbeing education, health, work health and safety standards, obviously agent reform, and agent responsibilities. So everything that literally touches the player. Outside of really the season length, which we have agreement rights now, but everything that obviously the players are touched on, that's what we have to negotiate. So
important protections.
Yeah, and so when you look at it's not just you'll see what's on the field, but everything behind it, like any other industry, is ensuring that again we've got the right framework in place for players to be protected. And also to make sure that there's accountability, for the governing body, that, this is what we agreed, you need to uphold what we agreed, which, can be challenging at times. Like any industry, they'll try and, claw back various terms and conditions. But again, I think that we can be their strongest supporter and strongest adversary. I think you can be both. And I think that's important, to respect each other's roles. When really the players, without the players there's no game, without the fans there's no professionalism. So, and that's a really important part.
And there's a bit of glamour and hype around players, and so I think sometimes it's a bit hard. Sometimes it's easy to forget that they often young players and they are quite vulnerable. So those types of protections, I guess, are pretty important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that often, what attracts, right? It's like the shiny toy in the shopping centre. It's always going to get the most level of eyeballs when people are talking about $1 million deals. But that is not the reality. That would be absolutely less than 2% of our playing group would be on that sort of money.
What does a typical player look like? What kind of people are coming into the sport? Yeah,
well, we've fought hard to increase minimum wage. Our job is, really the irresponsible thing to do would be, of the 1.347 billion that we secured in the last collective bargaining agreement, would be to just push it all into salaries. But that would be irresponsible and actually not acting in the best interest for our players, which is why we carve up that 1.37 is around rep payments, wellbeing education spend, retirement account, past player medical support fund, injury hardship fund, salary cap. All of those things are important when we divide that up. But our minimum wage now is around your 135, 140 mark. It wasn't so long ago, as I said in that earlier, in 2012, the minimum wage was about 55,000. So when you're asked to perform such significant, duties and responsibilities, to do that, you have to be paid accordingly.
And these are often young people coming in. So
yeah, totally. And the average age of our players is around 24 and a half. So they're not that old. And so what that tells us is they're coming in young, but they're also exiting young. So when you actually look at it, you're saying that the average career is about 3 to 5 years, so about 40 games. And so therefore you've got a very short window to maximise your earnings in a high pressure, high collision, high risk sport. Which is why then all those terms and conditions that we secure for not just during their career around contract security. So if I was to get injured and I'm on a 3-year deal, but I got injured at work, previously, prior to 2013, the club could terminate you without any protection of the contract that you secured. So that puts players in an incredibly vulnerable position where literally every time you take the field, your career could be over, and anything that you've invested in or tried to move yourself forward in can be taken away, which is why then people's ability to get home loans and buy property and credit cards and you couldn't do it. And the women have gone through that, the last sort of few years where without multi-year contracts, which only got secured in our last collective bargaining agreement, women were struggling to get loans and home loans. And
it's interesting, you don't think about it. The field is the workplace. You don't really think about, the grass out there, that is their workplace.
Oh, totally. And I think that's where often it's been forgotten. I think now, that the general public are way more in tune with the fact that this is a workplace because they actually see what the players are doing, which are putting on a great show. But they know the risks that are coming with that. And I think, I'm really obviously proud of our playing group, but also the fans, that they're able to actually genuinely look at it and say, no, that's necessary. They need to have those protections. And I think particularly during our collective bargaining agreement sort of dispute, the amount of people that would come up and stop you and say, keep going or well done. And even
you had huge community support.
Yeah, and even, mums and dads. I was at the, where we first met at the Transport Workers Union, conference, and one of the players' mums came over to me and said, and you often forget about this when you're in the moment, right? Because you're just working so hard to try and secure, what you feel is right and what you feel will advance the game. But coming over and saying, thank you for, protecting my son. And that happens multiple times where you sometimes do forget that this is someone's daughter, this is someone's son, husband, wife, partner, and that carries a lot of responsibility, no doubt, same as government, that, at a much lower level, obviously, but it matters to people. And I think that having those securities in place are fundamental to creating a safe workplace, which then means that from a mental health perspective, that they have the best chance of playing their best for as long as they can and putting on a great show.
I think one of the things that's always inspired me about the Players Association is it's often the marquee players who are on the $1 million contracts who are just probably don't need the CBA as much, but are so passionate about having it there for the blokes that they've played with and grown up with.
Because they've done it tough all the way through, wanting it better.
Yeah, you're 100% right, and that's what again I've been really proud of with our playing group, and it really sort of started again in that sort of 2012, 2013 period when our game's best had historically, either through a lack of education and understanding or just a lack of desire and I suppose strategy about why is this important and why do we need better terms and conditions for these players at the bottom end, but also the ability to share. So I never would have told, an Andrew Johns or Ben Kennedy about, me and my mates, are struggling on this pay, because that was just the way it was. Now, that's no one's fault. But moving forward, we had your Jonathan Thurston, Robbie Farah, Cam Smith, Cooper Cronks, Paul Gallen, those sort of guys back in about that 2013. They really got in behind it. And as an example, they had an opportunity to say, well, we want 50 grand for Origin because that is such a significant revenue generator for the code. But instead of doing that, they wanted better, insurances and increase in minimum wage and increase in training wage and better protections for players at the bottom end. And that's been consistent for the last, decade.
That's very powerful.
Which is huge. Plus, what that does, if I'm a leader in a club that is on a good contract, and inside that club, the players at the bottom end of the list are seeing their leaders fight for them, then that creates such a powerful code, which then moves the game forward because they feel like my leaders understand where I am, which then means that out on the field they're going to fight hard and work hard for their leaders on the field. So you can't have one without the other, in my view. And it's the same in our women's space. They're very strategic. They think about the game. Our players are more educated and more connected with where the game's at. And again, the terms and conditions in which we've secured, we really look at things bottom up where often you can find that if you're in an industry where your loudest voices are your leaders, and they're saying, well, we just want, bigger caps and bigger rep payments, which obviously is everyone's desire and wish. But if you don't have the perspective of the middle and the bottom, then you're going to leave people behind, and I think our code suffers from that.
And you're saying, we're just chatting before about the role you see the women's game having in the expansion and growth of the code.
It's huge. It's taken off.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so excited about the women's code. It's just fantastic to see that, despite the lack of opportunity, I suppose, around the amount of training that they can do and the amount of exposure to high performance environments, and the constant sort of uncertainty over the last several years, they've been able to move the game forward. And yes, the game has invested in it, which has been great. But we've also had to work hard to secure strong terms and conditions. The women only secured their first ever CBA in our last dispute, or our last CBA. So again, they'd been going for several years, but hadn't had any terms and conditions that were ratified that gave them absolute protection. It was a rolling year-on-year type agreement. So we were the last major code to secure that. Now we've got it. We will absolutely extend and advance on that. It's opened up so many more opportunities for eyeballs, participation, sponsorship, revenue, broadcast.
And the community's falling in behind, loving it.
And
really taking off.
Yeah, and any time a major code goes into establishes a team, it's like 7 to 10 X on investment, on participation, on revenues and whatnot that comes in. However, we have to make sure that we're getting the balance right between sustainability and we don't want to. Where the women are at very much is that they don't want further expansion. From a number of teams' perspective, it's things like expanding the squad size. To give more players an opportunity to be exposed to high performance environments. That then, when expansion comes, we have more players to pull from, or increasing the season length. So therefore, it gives them more opportunity to play games, or increasing the amount of pre-season training that they can do, which is all investment, right? But it's kind of like, let's pause on expanding teams. If you look at expansion, there's rapid expansion that's happened in the women's game. And I think there's lessons to be learned from the AFLW, and I think
it's important to get it right.
Yeah, and their code has suffered. There's no doubt about that. I mean, no one can argue that the game has suffered a bit with regards to the talent pool and spreading the resources and the finances too thin. And so there's some work to do in that space. And I think if the industry comes together and we're able to establish a really strong strategic plan and framework to grow the game, whilst also understanding, as you would know, at grassroots level, if you expand and more kids want to play, do you have the actual infrastructure at grassroots? Do you have the facilities? Do you have two change rooms?
Exactly.
So having, me being on the Central Coast, and my eldest daughter, who's 11, playing, for the Kincumber Colts. A lot of the venues don't have two change rooms. So
federal government's doing some work with that, getting women's change rooms built in sporting facilities, community sporting facilities. Still more work to be done though.
Yeah, so that's a significant thing. So for our code, unlike say AFLW that go and use cricket grounds that predominantly have had two change rooms, our code hasn't. So therefore, you've got to be careful about saying, well, do we have the facilities and the infrastructure at place at grassroots to support the significant rise of participation? And you don't want to get to a point where girls are at 16, 17, 18 going, stuff this. I'm tired of getting changed in the bushes or in the car or having, those types of things. And I think that's a really important part of the strategy.
Well, even some of those sheds are pretty...
They're pretty grim. They're pretty grim.
I'm not going
Let's be honest.
I'm not going in bare feet. That's for sure.
So you mentioned expansion of the game there, and of course the real question every Queenslander is asking is how many more teams should Queensland have?
Yeah, well, I think I think what Brisbane Broncos have been able to prove as well is that team continuity breeds success, and I think a strong club like the Broncos have done really well. Obviously, Dolphins, you would suggest would be one of the clubs that would be potentially vying for it. I know under their agreement, their licensing agreement, they had to invest around $2 million or something
Performance centre and stuff,
in junior sport and women's. But again, I think that Queensland have got enough teams at the moment.
I don't know.
But I think, but again, we've got some obviously exciting growth happening in the game with Perth and PNG coming in, and again, I truly believe, and we truly believe that the times now, to work through to get alignment across the stakeholders, the states, the clubs, us, rights holders, obviously the governing body, around where is the game going and where does it want to go, and then how do we all actually plug in to make sure that that strategy is implemented and it's successful.
Yeah, you've got to say, you've got to credit, the game has done so well in recent years, and that platform is there to go further. I was reflecting I've been a union official, and I've also negotiated with people like Vlandis and Abdo, and credit to you, they can be some tough characters to deal with.
Yeah, look, Peter's
in a good way.
There's always going to be push and pull. There's struggle and resistance is always par for the course when it comes to union representation. That's just part of it. You have to accept that. But Peter's been great for the game in driving it forward. He is a visionary. He does. He'll certainly push the boundaries with regards to that, and he's certainly a leader that the game needed on the at that time, and now moving forward, where we do have growth, expansion, broadcast rights that require strong negotiation. So that's certainly something that I definitely respect. I think both he and Andrew understand what our role is. And the significance of our role and how important it is in organising players and advancing their terms and conditions, as much as it might feel like you're taking money out of their back pocket at times. We have seen significant growth and benefit from it. And again, we, whether it's that sort of yin-yang type relationship, but again, the players and their representatives in us, all we will ever want to do is make sure that, again, people are honest, people are presenting the right information that gives us the best chance of taking an informed view or an informed approach, and inclusion up front on matters that directly impact players. I don't think that's hard, a hard thing to agree upon. Whether we agree on everything is not the point. The point is giving us the right information to be able to go back to our players, particularly our player leadership groups and our board, and then come forward with a collective position.
To advocate. I wanted to ask about supporting players into retirement. It's obviously a big part of what you do. How can that be done better? How is it happening now?
Yeah, it's really exciting, the fact that it's long overdue. But it's exciting that we've got a genuine past player program now that's up and running, led by Tom Simons, ex Roosters and Manly player.
And when we talk about retirement, we're not talking about people in their 70s,
no,
right?
No. And let's be clear, that literally it would be less than 5% of players are actually able to retire, post their NRLW career. So you're not you're transitioning away, and yes, you're retiring from one life, but you've got to go into another. And now that we've got a past player program that's led by Tom, and Joe Nullival, Morgan Tioka, and Keegan Hipgrave as just recently departed, but they've done a great job in building connections with our past player group from that sort of 0 to 5 year, 0 to 10 years. We don't, again, the investment in the past player program comes from the player share of revenue. So again, they're choosing to invest in their past player group and not take money now. They're looking at pushing that because they will all retire at some point. But we've just launched our medical pillar, which we've got a medical advisory group and referral network for our medical practitioners. Some different partners with West Fund and Loomis Imaging, and we'll continue to build on that. But it's a space that needed investment. It needed to be prioritised, and this group of players, have selflessly now invested in that, which they will utilise at a point in time. But there's always more work to do in that space. We definitely think that career transition and helping players find employment post-career is such a significant part of it.
What were those early months like for you, leaving the code?
Yeah.
Did you miss it?
Yeah, I did. For me, I'd sort of started mentally. I whether it was, just I suppose, me thinking ahead, but I was invested in the RLPA as a 22-year-old. I was on the board, and so then I was very much a part of the RLPA for a few years. Then went to England, came back. Helped sort of lead the CBA negotiations in 2012 with Dave Garnsey and Brendan Schwab and Brahim Dabchech, and then I became general president, and then became chair and sort of somewhat acting CEO in the last year of my career, and then recruited in Ian Prendergast, and we changed our board, or we brought in some, fantastic, directors at the time. One of those being, Dr. Deirdre Anderson, who still is on our board, and she's an absolute weapon. But probably transition issues for me didn't happen until like a few years later, when you just sort of the hamster on the wheel, and you just keep going and going and going, and I never really sort of stopped post-career. And took in everything that I'd achieved or overcome.
Those
or
quieter
accomplished.
moments where it catches up to you.
Yeah, and it's sort of like a slow creep that ends up grabbing you. And I think I just sort of burned out. And sort of 4 years post-retirement, it hits everyone differently and at different times, and it can come back. And so I think the investment in that space and in making sure that, again, that's why the investment, whilst they're in our care, and whilst they are in club environments, becomes so important with regards to having the framework internally about career development, well-being, mental health support, cultural safety, and cultural inclusion, psychological safety, all of those types of things, again, going back to workplace, putting that framework in place where we've got good people around the players to assist with their transition through the game and out.
That player welfare stuff's really important for the players, obviously, but I think it also sends this real signal to the community about destigmatising mental health, saying these big tough men still need those supports, so it's okay for you to, and it's okay for you to reach out for help and talk to your mates.
Yeah, I think why people love sport is it's like they were the superheroes that weren't that were real. So instead of saying, I'm going to be Superman, or Spider-Man or Wonder Woman or whatever, it's like, I want to be that player, for whether it's league or football or union or AFL or whatever the code. And I think that's the connection piece, is that it's touchable. Like, you can actually see it and you can go and do it. You can become that.
But it does place a huge responsibility on young players.
Yeah, it does. And I think that most of them are still learning about themselves. I mean, I'm 44 and I'm still, trying to work myself out at times. So is my wife.
I think we all are.
But it's one of those things that, again, there is a lot of pressure on them. I mean, again, as I said, the average age is about 24 and a half. The average age for our women is about 21. So there's a high churn rate of women coming in and going out of the game. And a lot of the players are young fathers, as well. So you're sort of navigating through professional sport and everything that comes with that. And it's a great opportunity. Absolutely it is. But it can be a heavy load to bear for some players, and it's not for everyone. And the same for our women. We've got some incredibly strong and resilient mums playing our game, and women that want to become mums. And again, I think that's something that we're really proud of, is securing a much improved parental and pregnancy policy.
Fantastic, absolutely fantastic.
And allowing players to say, hey, I can make a life choice that I want to have kids and I'm not going to then be just cast aside and out of the game. And again, not many people would be aware of this, but again, out of the player's share of revenue, that when a player leaves, to have a child, then we pay for the replacement player to come in, not the club. So it's a very important point that the NRL's distributable revenue that we secure our percentage share of, the clubs get to retain all their revenues and get a $4.75 million margin, cash margin on top of player payments. So at the moment, all the money that the players receive that go towards their terms and conditions and their benefits and entitlements, it's coming from the NRL's distributable revenue.
So talk us through just the math of that. So what's the broadcast rights? How much of that goes to clubs? How much goes to players? How's all that worked out?
Yeah, so it's carved up. So all the NRL's distributable revenue, so your broadcast rights, your sponsorship, some government funding, depending on what it's for, like major events, for example, and other a few other sort of small bits and pieces. Broadcast rights still take up, probably 65, 70% of the overall revenues. We've seen a constant, rise in obviously sponsorship and broadcast rights, and clubs have, seen the benefit of rise of memberships, merch sales, and sponsorship agreements. And so what we then secure is about male and female is about 43.5% of the NRL's revenue. States that go to pathways and participation and whatnot's about sort of 14%. Clubs receive about 16%. So that's money over the top of the player payments and what they have to pass on to players. And then NRL obviously retain their money to be able to run the game. So clubs then obviously they get their money above player payments. So the salary cap is paid for by the players via the NRL's distributable revenue. And then so that's a pass through. So effectively money goes to clubs pass on to players. Yeah. Then obviously the clubs retain all their revenues from sponsorship, merch sales, ticket sales, licensing, products, and they retain all that. So again, they're going much better than they ever have been, which is great, where they needed to, because the game, the clubs were suffering from only just getting enough to pay the players and not then extend on their business. And if you look at the Super League, that's their issue, is that the cap, the money that they're getting to pay players that's going to clubs is just that. You can't actually build on your business. So now clubs are profitable. I don't think there's a club that is not profitable. Now it's just about, okay, what's next?
And do you have, being so reliant on broadcast rights, and I think they've gone up because they've been the last bit of content drawing people to free-to-air and cable. How do you see changes in, the disruption happening there?
Yeah, obviously one of the things that I think is really strong about our game is that we're not relying on our international team or our Australian team, to prop up the game. And I think it's in my view, it's very dangerous, from a strategy perspective, but also revenue generation and sort of and certainty of your code. Whereas if your national team dips, which happens, and then broadcast rights and sponsorship rights are attached to that, and that's the story
of rugby, isn't it?
Yeah, and it can be of soccer as well, like outside of participation money that goes to. If their national team drops, then that puts the code at risk.
Pressure.
Whereas our game, we need to continue to work on our international program, but we've got a very strong national domestic competition in NRL and NRLW. Broadcast rights are always going to be a big part of it. I think, obviously with DAZN, buying buying Fox and you've got your Nine and Stan. Look, it is a sensational product, and the NRL aren't going to broadcasters trying to sell marbles, or ping pong. They're going and selling a major code that has got significant growth opportunity in it, but it's good to see some competitive tension between the two. No doubt, whether 7 and 10, want to go after Origin and those types of things, because it is. If you look at again this year, two of the men's 3 Origin games will sit inside the top 4 most watched shows.
Yeah, amazing.
Women's Origin outranked any other sporting code.
So good.
In Australia, it outranked even the British and Irish Lions and Wallabies Test with regards to viewership. So the women's Origin now sits inside the actual overall sport viewership rather than separating them both out. So here's women's sport and here's men's sport. Women's sport is now going inside of that, like no different to the Matildas when they played here, and you look at their eyeballs. So
because it's a great watch.
It is, and I think our game is in a really good spot with regards to ball in play. The constant, the way in which it's being played at the moment. It's fast, it's physical. But again, the challenge is going to be around the season length and pulling that back a little bit, which can be offset by the inclusion of new teams, and obviously the rise of the women's game, which helps fill content as well, and then having a better international schedule that allows nations players to play for their heritage and their nation, but not in and amongst a hugely condensed program, which our game is the longest running program of any code. When you look at starting to play in February and finishing in the middle of November, yet it's the most brutal. So we've just got to make sure that we get that balance right.
Yeah, well, there's lots to look forward to in rugby league.
Absolutely, it's a great game. Played by some fantastic people. I think that it's a big part of our game now is that we are, arguably the most culturally diverse game in this hemisphere. We've got some fantastic characters, which is forever increasing. Obviously, the women are producing some fantastic content that are unique as opposed to the men. And again, if you're a sponsor, in my view, you should be sponsoring our game, and broadcasters should be getting in behind us.
And players are clearly well supported, which makes a difference.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, that's really important. Last segment we do on our podcast is we ask our guest, we give you a couple of quotes and then ask if you can guess who they're from. And so I'll do the first one. The quote is, this feels a bit unfair because we've already teased you about Origin, but anyway, the quote is...
No hints, don't give them any hints.
The quote is, winning isn't everything, but it beats coming second.
Is that Billy?
That was Wally.
Oh, Wally.
Yeah, King Wally Lewis said that, and he's telling me the other night at the Bronx game how good it felt to walk out of Homebush after that game 3 and have the crowd ribbing him, and he...
Yeah, I saw Wally leave. We were sitting just down from him, and he had a grin on his face like a Cheshire cat. Let me tell you. So he was a very happy man.
Wally went to my kids' primary school, and he came back and visited last year. It was amazing, amazing.
That's great. Renee, do you want to do the second one?
I've got the next one. It feels a bit unfair me having this one. 6 more songs.
Oh, Alfie, the king. If Wally's the king, he's the prince and / court jester. He's such a good bloke, Alfie. He's one of those guys that every time I see him, no matter where he is or how many beers he's had on his
3 in the afternoon or 3 in the morning.
He always makes a beeline, and we have a great chat. Always asks, he used to ask about my dad and now my mum, and he's a real classic
really
bloke.
decent.
Yeah.
So we have a bit of a campaign underway with the boys from Bloody Brilliant Beers.
Which
is
the lads,
to
I owe
have
them some money too. Unfortunately.
The
IOU.
we're campaigning to have the table that Alfie stood on at the Caxton Hotel declared a heritage site for Brisbane.
Oh, yes.
You've got to sign the petition and do
So
a
can we
Google
ask
review.
you to sign the petition?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll sign it. Those lads are going gangbusters. It's great to see. I've seen some of that content. Darcy and Clutterbuck. They're good guys doing good things. So yeah, no, I'll absolutely sign that petition.
That's great. And the last one's real topical, and I'm sure we could do a whole episode on it, but maybe just quick remarks. This one, the quote is, "Be careful what you wish for. Money's not everything."
I don't know. Yeah, it wouldn't be Wayne Bennett. He loves his cash too much. No, I don't know who that was.
This is Phil Gould commenting
yeah.
on 6 tackles on R360.
Oh yeah. No, well, Gus has got he's got a lot of opinions. He's obviously got a great mind. He's been around a long time, which rugby league IQ and IP is something that is critically important. So yeah, he's good value, Gus.
Well, we'll take that as a very diplomatic answer. Yes. And that's it for our questions. Thanks so much for joining us, Clint. Now we want to see your sandwich. So
all right,
let's
Yeah.
grab it out.
Food safety, we put it in the
Thanks for
fridge.
having me.
Let's say chicken and avo and cucumber.
Yeah, something like that.
We've got good food safety standards here at Unpacked.
Yeah, it's great to see. What have we got here? I knew because it was pre-made, I didn't want to go a toaster. I love a toasted sandwich.
Yeah, nothing beats a toasted
It would be
sandwich.
cold by now.
Yeah,
I see.
Yeah, so this,
Brown bread,
Yeah,
tomato.
That's very healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it just reminds me, as I said, I used to get ribbed all the time for my mum packing my lunch. And so this just takes me back to childhood memories, which is great. I'll make sure I don't drop it. Look at that beauty. Fantastic.
I think you got to take a bite of it. I
Oh,
think that's
really?
part of the
Okay.
deal. I
Oh,
think
right,
you got to
okay,
have some.
yeah.
I think you got to have some sandwich. Give us a
Is that the
report
sandwich
back.
your mum used to make? Is that
I love that you waited till he had food in his mouth
we do that
before
every
you
time.
asked him.
It's part of the stew.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it like 4 out of 5.
Oh?
It's good.
Not quite as good as mum's, but
Good
up there.
texture. Well, it's not made with the same love.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's okay. So
Is there condiments on there?
yep. We don't really need it with the avocado.
Right.
I'm not a big butter man. So I think avo and a bit of salt and pepper is good for me.
I'd probably swap the avo for mayo, but
Yeah, I was
that's-
thinking a bit of. I thought all it needed was a little bit of mayo in there.
Well, now that I'm back playing again, I've got to watch my weight. So yeah.
Well, that's a perfectly healthy sandwich, so you get a full tick for that one.
Yep, beautiful.
Thanks so much for joining us, Clint.
Thanks.
Really appreciate
Thanks
it.
for having me.
Clint,
Really
that's
appreciate
awesome.
it.
Thank you.
Wow, that was a great first chat, Renee, and I think we'll have you back as a guest host. You were fantastic.
Thank you. Absolutely.
And isn't
Anytime.
Clint an inspiration?
Yeah, fantastic. What a great chat. Just wonderful. But yeah, hopefully Corinne's not sick again. But if she is, I'll jump in anytime.
And it just goes to show no matter what job you're in, you need a collective. You need to work together
Exactly.
to make things better,
Exactly.
even if
Perfect.
you're a rugby league player.
Well, especially. Teamwork flows naturally.
Exactly. Well, thanks so much, Renee, and thanks everyone for tuning in again. We love getting your messages and comments, so please keep them coming, and we'll keep incorporating them into the show. And of course, if you like it, tell your friends, subscribe, do all the things that help us reach more people. And have a great day.